Good morning, Seesaw friends. We're here to present to you. My name is Gavin Roark. I'm at Virginia Commonwealth University, and we're presenting on, again, the ultimate Seesaw Experience, the balance of being a mid-level professional. We would ask if you're interested in joining our poll anywhere, whether you're in the room or on the live stream, if you would text Chandra Myrick, CHANDRAMYRIC 227 to the following number, 37607, and that will ensure you can join our poll anywhere kind of throughout, and that's also those that are watching this live stream.
Good morning, my name is Chandra Myrick, and I'm at Florida State University, and we'll go ahead and get started and start with our learning objectives for this session. Our primary goal is to really talk about what it means to be a mid-manager and how mid-level managers are defined. So we'll talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities, but also talk through some of the common issues that mid-level managers face. And then at the end, we're going to share some words of wisdom, some feedback from some folks who are currently serving in mid-level manager positions throughout the Seesaw.
So you all came to this presentation for a reason. So what are some of those words that come to mind, and why do you think we would use the Seesaw example for this specific topic? This is where all of you participate.
It can have its ups and downs.
Have ups and downs.
Like balance.
Really working to learn that balance part and what that really means.
Maintaining a collaborative relationship with yourself and your colleagues.
Maintaining a collaborative relationship with yourself and colleagues.
Different constituencies, the senior administrators and the people that you're supervising.
Yeah, looking at the different constituency groups and what that looks like. Any other thoughts?
You may fall off, but you can always get back on.
That's right. You may fall off, but the seesaw is still there, and you can join back on, and it didn't move. It's still there. And so, no, all great. Yeah, we had a lot of fun when we were talking about topics and, what would we title it? What do we want to get all of you to join the room with? And we talked a lot about that balancing piece and how that looks for us in the roles that we serve on our campuses, and kind of how that helps set the tone for the entire presentation.
So just a little bit of the outline. We're going to start off by defining exactly what a mid-level manager is, and I think you'll find as we go throughout the presentation that this is probably one of the more complex definitions ever in the history of mankind, is to really explain exactly what a mid-level manager is. By show of hands, how many in the room right now would consider yourself a mid-level manager? You're a mid-manager. Okay. So we're going to start off talking about defining it, talking about what it means to transition into a mid-level position. Do we have any entry-level staff in the room who are thinking about that next step, that next level? Okay, great. And then talk a little bit about what it means to actually manage from the middle. And then again, as we indicated before, some words of wisdom. We also wanted to be really intentional about resources related to mid-level managers, and so we're going to share some of those resources at the end as well, and then certainly open it up for an opportunity for folks to ask any questions that you might have about mid-level management. So that being said, let's get started with defining a mid-level manager. And as Gavin mentioned earlier, this is an interactive presentation, so we want to start off with opening up our first poll everywhere. Of course, it's now not working, which is always lovely. So we're gonna improvise because that's what you do in mid-level management. And we'll just start off by asking, earlier we started off by asking why you thought we had the seesaw image on the slide. Right now, if you could throw out one or two words that come to mind when someone says mid-level manager, what words come to mind when you hear that phrase? Assistant director. Other words that come to mind when you hear mid-level manager? Putting out fires. Being the boss, but not the what?
The real boss.
Say it one more time. Being the boss, but not the real boss. Other things that come to mind. Buffer. Yes, ma'am. New opportunities. Other words that come to mind?
A bridge.
A bridge.
Okay, so
Delegator. Handing down policies but not creating them.
Transitioning from us to them.
Transitioning from us to them.
Advocate for other staff.
Advocate for other staff. Yeah, all great words and phrases, and we could probably go on for days to really describe what a mid-level manager really is, and specifically in student affairs. So we're gonna get started with one of our resources from our actual student affairs organization. I don't know maybe how many folks have ever seen or read the book, The Mid-Level Manager in Student Affairs. It's definitely a resource that I would recommend. Great, just kind of intro into what it means to be a mid-level manager in student affairs. And one of the things that the book really talks about is all the different roles that mid-level managers get to play. And many of you called out a number of those things that are covered in the book. But one of the pieces or phrases that often get characterized with mid-level managers are the opportunity for collaboration and change. When you think about mid-level managers, they are often seen as the folks who are in the most ideal position to implement both collaboration as well as change in any organization. When you start talking about what exactly or who is a mid-level manager, again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in the presentation, but one easy way to define a mid-level manager is they typically oversee or supervise people as well as processes. And so that's one of the pieces in the book. Another easy way to kind of define what a mid-level manager is that it's someone not in an entry-level position, but someone who was also not technically considered a CHO, and so not your chief housing officer. But those roles, again, in the middle can vary greatly by institution, any institution. And they're also seen as the folks who have the most direct impact and interaction with frontline staff in any organization. And so as we keep going, again, we're going to talk about just how complex this is. And one of our colleagues in the region perhaps said it best, Countess Hughes, who's currently at the University of Virginia. You're close enough to the bottom to see the everyday issues, but you're enough at the top that you have to see above the fray in terms of really thinking about what it means to be a mid-level manager.
We enjoy that baseline definition a lot, but then we also, in our conversations, talk about that it's just complex. It's not an easy, this is obviously what a mid-level position is. And so when we talk about it, it's highly sought. One of the things that entry-level staff now is they're there 18 months and go, I want to go be a CHO and a mid-manager tomorrow. Well, it takes some time, right? Everyone wants to get there, but once you get there, you're like, what's it look like now? I don't know. I signed up for this. And so, how do you work through that transition part of it? Various level of mid-level management. We enjoyed, I saw the question, we said, hey, who in here at mid-level? And then there were some answers like, maybe, I think I am. It is really complex, right? There are various levels. You could have 3 years of experience and really be in a mid-level type position, or you could be 30 years in a position and be in a mid-level type position. And so I think that's some of where, when we look at this definition and the complexity of this definition, that it stands out, because we all have a really good understanding of what an entry-level position is for the most part. It's, grad, again, I just got my degree, master's, I go to TPE, and I get my entry-level position. Well, and then the road to the mid-level management and CHO, it looks very different for everyone. Range of experience that, kind of talk about the diverse job titles and positions. Some of it is looking at what it is in the description, what's it include, staff that you supervise, asking good questions when you're looking at those positions. All those kind of interweave with each other as you think about that complexity of a mid-manager and what that looks like.
So another important resource for those who might be trying to better understand what a mid-level manager is from our very own QOI. How many of you are familiar with the body of knowledge that identifies the core competencies for QOI? Again, another great resource. It's really specifically designed to really identify what should those of us who are working in the housing profession, what should we know? What skills should we have? What competencies should we possess? And then it's broken down in what I consider to be a very easy way to understand your entry level, your mid-level manager, as well as your CHO or your senior student affairs administrators, if you will, type work. And so when you go to the body of knowledge, it's divided by individual competencies. And advising is, we're not focusing on advising, but advising happens to be one of the competencies. But the reason that we wanted to include this slide is just to show you how the core competencies are divided up. To give you an example of, if you're trying to understand what should I know because I'm getting ready to go, or I would like to seek a mid-level role, when you look at the core competencies in the body of knowledge, there are 3 different functional areas: direct service, management, and strategy and policy. And so an easy way to have a good understanding of how this looks for mid-level managers is the management function is what we would otherwise identify as the skills and the things that folks who are in mid-level management should know. And so one of the things you see in all of them under the knowledge needed is that anything your frontline staff should know minimally a mid-level manager should also be able to do, and then some increasing responsibilities in areas of expertise, and then also seeing the difference from those who sit at a lens where they are developing strategy as well as policy. And so this is a great tool when you're trying to determine exactly what kind of skills do I need to be a mid-level manager. Perhaps you are at your institution and you all are working on job descriptions and different things of that nature for those assistant director type positions. This is a huge and very helpful resource to help you be able to firmly identify the difference between what's expected from individuals in their entry-level positions, and then as you start talking about making that transition to the middle. And then even for those of us who might be in mid-level management today and are thinking about that next step, great resource in terms of looking over in the strategy and policy functions to give you a better understanding at the CHO level what's expected of you. And again, helpful because this is directly from our very own international organization through Hawaii. So next we'll talk a little bit about transitioning into a mid-level position. And again, a quote from one of our current mid-level managers here is that part that a lot of people talk about, and that's being a liaison with both upper-level administrators as well as with new professionals. And so when we start talking about letting the transition begin, one of the things that I'll say is that there's no manual for how to be a mid-level manager. Most of us, when we were in our entry-level positions, we had training. Training probably lasted 2 or 3 weeks, maybe it lasted a month. You had icebreakers, you had team builders, you had all these expectations. Somebody was handing you 50 million handouts, and by the time training was done, you knew exactly how to do your job. You were ready to go, you felt the put. Life looks very different in the mid-level manager position. And I was having this conversation last night with one of my old supervisors who the first time I was in a semi-mid-level role, my first day of training, she welcomed me, and the first question I asked her was, where's the manual? Like, when will I get the manual for this job? And she handed me a half-empty binder and said, here you go. We've been working on it for a while. Why don't you go ahead and finish it? And I was like, I don't think I'm in Kansas anymore. What do you mean finish it? And so we often say that a lot, and even when I'm hiring assistant directors, is there is no formal training. It is a lot of learning on the go. Being willing to look at documents and start your own checklist of the questions that you need to ask, the people you need to meet with, and all those pieces. And so it can look very different when you start talking about what their training and onboarding looks like for a mid-level manager. Some of you may have even encountered, you got there the first day and were told that tomorrow you're responsible for the week. And you need to coordinate all the staff and everything. And you may not even know how to get to your office. But very realistically, that training process looks very different for mid-level managers. Understanding expectations from the top and the bottom. It's one thing when you're an entry-level professional and your supervisor has all these great expectations. It's a whole other ballgame when your staff have expectations and your boss have expectations. And for those of you who are in mid-level positions, you probably know and can attest that often those expectations don't match. People have very different understandings of what they need from you in a mid-level position. And so that can actually be quite taxing at times. Navigating the chessboard, politics are definitely at play in mid-level positions. Understanding who you should know, what meetings you should attend, when you should be present. Some of us have roles where sometimes it's important to be seen at certain things and different things of that nature, which may look a little bit different. But entry-level staff who may have very much subscribed when you have to be someplace. And so really understanding the politics that are in play, the meetings that you sit in, what power you really do and don't have. Sometimes we are representing our departments and our institutions at times where there may be an opportunity for you or your department to make some pretty big changes. And so what level of power do you really have to make those changes are always important things to understand and know. Implementing change. I love having conversations with new professionals who believe that I have a lot of power. And one of the things that I tell them all the time is that I probably have been told more what to do as a mid manager than I was ever told what to do as an entry-level professional. I do think that a lot of our new professionals have a grandiose idea of what our jobs look like. But I too have found myself at times saying, I have a master's degree in how many years of education and years of experience, and I'm doing fill in the blank. And so I do think that that's one of the pieces that's often a little bit deceiving when you start talking about mid-level positions, because oftentimes I think there's a perception of power, especially when it comes to change, and being very realistic of what that might actually look like. Very important to take the time to look, listen, and learn when you're transitioning into the mid-level role. Oftentimes you might have great ideas and things that you want to see the exact certain way, but remember the complexity of the fact that you are not just about making changes and advocating for your staff, but your supervisor is also going to have some pretty specific expectations of what your role is and what you need to do. And probably the last part that's a little bit different when you think about transitioning into mid-level management is that that peer group looks very different. Many of us started off as entry-level professionals, and there were probably 3, 4, for some large institutions, maybe upwards of 10, 15, or even 20 other folks who did exactly what you did. When you start moving into mid-level positions, often you will find you may be the only one, or you may be one of 2, or one of 3. And that peer group starts looking very different. Often with our entry-level positions, that peer group is not just about their professional life, it's also about their personal life. And so they use that peer group in many interesting ways that look a little different when you start talking about being a mid-level manager. And even if you're at an institution where there may be a number of you in mid-management roles, you may find that your specific job responsibilities are so drastically different that it's not the same as when you have 10 other people who are doing the exact same thing that you're doing. One of the things one of my previous supervisors said to me is that it's probably one of the loneliest chairs you'll ever sit in, because there are usually very few people on your campus doing the exact same thing. And even within housing, I know in my institution, an assistant director in housing is not the same as the assistant director for leadership, Greek life, and some of those other pieces. And so even finding those peers within your campus can be difficult. Oftentimes mid-level managers find that their peer groups are folks that they get to connect with at things like this at CEHO or at their state organizations or at a CUHO, because it's just often not a lot of them where they currently are.
Chandra and I talk about that peer group at times because sometimes we'll just text each other or call each other and go, yeah, and we have that connection of it's just good. It's not that we need an answer from someone, it's just trying to go through it, and that's been fun. So part of it when you look at it is in that transition, seek advice and talk with your new supervisor. I'm a big proponent. You should never take a position just because of a supervisor. Because guess what? Supervisors could change, right? There needs to be some value congruency in terms of what that department values, where the institution's going, what the position is. Now, also on the same side of that is you should not take a position and you go, well, when I get there, I can change that supervisor. You are not. That's not your job. That you don't supervise your supervisor. So again, being able to build that relationship and know that they're going to try to give you guidance, they're going to give you autonomy. If you done some of that research, right? You talk to them about where they're going, what they see. But it's an important piece of that. Figuring out and looking at the advice piece. They're going to be able to give you a good set on the political things that Chandra talked about, the staff that are there. And so I think that advice is important. Tackle the difficult things and awkward moments as they happen. Putting them off only adds to the hesitancy. You were hired for a reason. So what are you doing to build up a strong structure for those that come after you? awkward conversations with staff that were not happy you were hired, or staff that were not happy that they didn't get the job, you need to address them, have a conversation, and then keep it moving. And so it's real easy. When you think about, especially on the res life side, the relationships of everyone, you're trying to build up, you've got the peer group, and then maybe the ones you're going to do trivia with. Well, you've got to be able to tackle the hard conversations of well, I feel like there's some tension there. Let's talk about that. I feel like there's some things that we need to work through. And ultimately, you need to set the clear expectations so that you can do that with them. You're hired to get a job done, not make friends. True colors, Gavin is a blue. I'm like the biggest blue. Chandra is not as blue. But so when this was my bullet, we had to kind of look at it. I was like, I don't know if I can say that one that way. But the fact of the matter is, I feel like I can be friendly with staff, but I'm not. My goal is not to be their friend, right? Hey, how's it going? Okay, I don't know. And so again, we want to look at how I can be respectful. We can agree to disagree at times. We can work together on projects, but it's not to make everyone happy. If my job was to make everyone happy, I would never get anything done. And so again, figuring that out can be tough, especially when that transition from a larger group and looking at those connections between people. Gossip and holding feelings in are the biggest downfalls when making this transition. There's I believe it's a Google exec, about to come up with a book called Radical Candor. Did a TED Talk on it. I would highly recommend go look at that afterwards. But it talks about when she looked at some business functions, and it's about giving direct feedback, but it's because you personally care. And that's the quadrant you want to kind of get to is that, listen, I'm giving you tough feedback because it's important for you to hear. And the example that she gives in her TED Talk and in her book that will be coming out is that she said in a presentation, a lot. She was talking to a group, or her supervisor at the time pulled her to the side afterward and said, great topic, good job. You say a lot. And she said that, she kind of just, pushed it off, didn't really talk about it. And it's like, okay. And then her supervisor kind of said it again, said, no, you say a lot. And she was like, yeah, it's okay. And then finally her supervisor said, when you say you sound stupid. And she was like, oh, like it wasn't just that it was like kind of, it's like, no, it's how does this work? And so that's that kind of radical candor quadrant, if you will. So thinking about that. And then open and honest communication is important. Transparency is important, and it's tough. Transparency because you're trying to balance that and where it's going in terms of, it's not that I don't want to share this information, but it shouldn't become a gossip factor either. I'm trying to figure out where it's going, how I'm doing this. There's still decisions to be made, and so input is good, but sometimes it's a tough decision. So I think that how you look at that communication with others and transparency is really key. Establish expectations in the role. What do you expect of those staff? You may have been in a situation where you had kind of joint expectations with other ones, and now you're the one in charge of, what do I expect as the Senior Associate Director of Residence Life at VCU? What does that look like? What do we, and then we're talking about hall director, area administrators, across the RAs, and kind of creating and looking at what's currently there, and what is it that you expect in that new role. Be patient, as some may have a difficult time with transition, and this too shall pass. The fact of the matter is, your vision will start becoming clear, and people will either say, I align greatly with that, or I think I'll go somewhere else. And that's okay too, right? Life's about choices. I say that a lot. It's like a quote that I say, well, life's about choices, and we have to make good ones, and we have to, make sure that we're being honest and authentic and transparent, but I expect that you be at work on time. That's something that would be good for me, right? Like there's some help there, right? Sometimes, again, I think the biggest kind of thing that's out there, and Chandra and I talked, and she hit it on a little bit, is that people think that it's about making the right or wrong decision. Our jobs are more about making the best decision with the information we have, and we have to go with it. And it's not about that it's a wrong or a right decision. It's about trying to really sort through where's the pros and the cons? I called Chan one day. I said, I made a really bad decision, but it was the best bad decision I could have made today. And she just laughed. And I said, you know, and so it's one of those, really looking at that. And I think that at the entry level, just your eyes open a lot to that, because I think it can be seen as, oh, obviously there's a right or wrong, or a yes or no. And that's, I've found not to be the case. First years are tough in transition. I think first years and take care of yourself kind of go in hand with me. I had an unfortunate kickball accident my second day on the job as an assistant director at Florida State, in which brief story of I may have unfortunately knocked out an associate vice president playing kickball, and they went to the hospital for a long time with their mouth, and it was meddled up. And this was my second day on the job. And I went home to my wife and I said, I don't know if my keys are going to work tomorrow. And this vice president was extremely, hey, it's okay. Later became my wife's boss down the road, indirectly in her area. And so it was one of those things, though, of that was tough. Like I was like, I will never transition. I had colleagues at the time that helped supported me. And that was really big. But then I was like, if I can get through this, never play who had the worst week with Gavin. Let me be real clear. I will win that many times. But I think it is. First years are tough, right? You're trying to figure out things. You're trying to figure out who to connect with. You're trying to go through your own transition. Many CHOs will tell you that that's the hardest transition, is moving from the entry level to the mid-level, because things are different and you're trying to figure that out. The other thing of taking care of yourself, no one is going to take care of you but you. That comes to health, that comes to taking time for yourself, that comes to taking vacation, that comes to how many hours you work. I have a very supportive supervisor, and he works long hours, and we talk about it. He doesn't expect me to work hours, he expects me to get the job done. And we talk, and I take vacation, and he encourages me to take vacation. But the fact of the matter is, I've got to be aware of that. I have not been as healthy in my new role. I've kind of got to get back on track. And I just told someone about a month ago, I'm feeling like I'm getting a better sense of that balance of peace again. I'm getting a better sense of what that looks like. Because it's daunting when you want to take that next jump up, and then you get it, and then you go, okay, what's this really look like? And how do I find a new center balance? Because I had everything going in my hall director role, or my coordinator role, or my assistant director role, and now I'm associate director, and it just seems like there's more stress, or it seems like there's more to do. And I tell people all the time, if you go home at 5 o'clock, you go home at 9 p.m., guess what? You still got stuff in the morning at 8 a.m. waiting on you. And so really looking at that balance piece, and if you don't take care of you, who will?
Let's talk a little bit about managing from the middle and exactly how that looks. Part of managing from the middle is understanding that oftentimes you are a leader, you are the head of a specific unit that is part of an even larger unit. And so residence life is a good example. You might be the assistant director or an associate director or even a director for residence life, but the reality is that that unit is part of a larger organization. And so really understanding that sphere of influence. Again, this goes back to that perception. I think oftentimes people see the title and assume. I often even get that with my family members all the time who are like, oh, so you're in charge of housing. So every little thing from facilities, and it's like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm in charge of this. There is still so much more of that also happens. Understanding that when you're in a mid-level position, some of those challenges are the same even when you move up. And so what do I mean by that? You might find that in my experiences as well, even when people move from one mid-level position to another one, it's still that kind of the stigma in terms of really understanding how much influence you actually have. And even sometimes I think from us who are in mid-level positions, we just assume that once I become a director, like I can still do, all the things, great and wonderful things I do. But I don't know anyone at an institution who doesn't have a supervisor or doesn't have a boss or doesn't have someone telling them what to do. And so you will find, I tell people some days when they ask me about mid-level management, it's the same problems with different people. I have some of the same conversations with assistant directors that I had with RAs. They're just framed a little different. And so really being realistic and understanding that piece. The piece, and Gavin talked a little bit about this, transparency and information sharing. One of the things that we found out a lot is that our staff, particularly our new professionals, have an expectation that they are in the know. I have staff who in interviews will start out, I'm about the why. I need to understand the why. And sometimes the why is an easy answer, and sometimes it's not. The other thing about mid-level management is that you have to be on team good idea, even when you don't think it's a good idea. So when staff are asking the why, and you too think it's stupid, you're not in a position where you can say it's stupid, because you need those folks to believe in the vision and the direction that the department or the institution might go in. And so it's definitely a fine balance when you talk about being transparent, making sure your staff feel like they have the information that they need, but that you're also delivering that in a way that is also meeting the expectations that your supervisor may have. Supporting those that you supervise is, again, when we talk about the seesaw effect in terms of being an advocate for your staff, while also still making sure you're meeting expectations. I think the other piece that's really important when you talk about managing from the middle is that it's a great opportunity to not just be a teacher, but to also learn. Some of the more important lessons I've ever learned have come from people who have not necessarily supervised me, but for whom I've been the supervisor of. And so being open to the lessons that you can learn from those who work directly with you. Because at the end of the day, you're really part of a team. One thing I told Stephanie once, I said, I get no joy and satisfaction in making your life difficult. Like, I don't wake up in the morning and say, let me think of all the ways I can make my staff mad today. Because it's your staff that has to help you get the job done. And so being realistic about that piece and being open to the opportunity to continue your own growth and development by the folks that you are actually working with is also hugely important. You don't have to have all the answers. And I do think sometimes that that's a huge pressure we put on ourselves, that when we get in these roles, all of a sudden we're the expert. And some people may refer to you as an expert. But life is a journey, and we're all learning along the same way, and it doesn't change just because your position changes.
And before we get, I think the one thing I would add to that is, if you're not really good at this right now, challenge yourself. Solution-based thinking. We all can come with a problem to our boss and go, what do you want me to do? But are you coming with, here's kind of what I ran into, here's kind of what I'm thinking about going with. That's a skill that needs to be learned. It's not an automatic. And I will tell you, over the past few years, it just becomes everyone feed me the answer, and you coming with an answer or proposed answer that may get, you may have some conflict to work through why that one, oh, that's good, or you may just be said, hey, that's great, go with it. And so again, thinking about that, I think I've seen my brain thinks more, because I can't always just go, question I get, go to my supervisor and go, all right, what should I do? I mean, that's not how it goes. Yeah.
I want to add one more piece to this before we move on. I think when you're in a mid-level position, it's important to be strategic about what you choose to share when you think about being an advocate for your staff. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Oftentimes, your director or senior level staff member, the only thing they may know about your staff is what you tell them. And sometimes we get in a habit of using our supervisors as great opportunities to vent about issues and problems that are happening. And that sometimes becomes truth for certain leaders. And so being very strategic and understanding about what you share and how you share it. I found myself at times trying to explain a situation to them, and I'm like, I don't understand where did they get that idea from? And I'm like, oh, because the other day when I was having a moment, I said X, Y, and Z, and so now that's stuck. Or being strategic about exactly what may be going on with my staff at any given time in terms of what I'm sharing is also important. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, about the need to keep your supervisor in the know. But remember, someone said earlier, I think it was EJ, used the term bridge to define mid-level managers, and that's exactly the case. Sometimes you are the closest to your entry-level staff that your senior level staff will ever see. And so being mindful of the information that you're choosing to share in a light that will allow you to continue to be a supportive advocate for your staff as well is very important.
next we're going to do a little bit of an activity. We thought it was just fun to kind of break out into a little bit. And so we don't expect you to go anywhere. You're welcome to just sit, talk with people near you. You're watching, talk to yourself, or maybe find someone else to pull into your office right now. But we're going to kind of paint the picture. And so this half of the room is going to focus on the first question that I address, and this half is going to kind of focus on the second. If you have time, go 5 or 6 minutes. But I'm going to read it out for those because I know it may not be hard to see. So if you've recently been hired, so part of it is we wanted to paint a picture to show you some of the complexities of what it looks like, right? And so this is a scenario. We kind of brainstormed, looked at some things. You've recently been hired as the Associate Director of Residence Life at Chandra Roark University. In your first week, you hear about an event in passing that causes you some concern. The event is an alcohol promotion event that's been occurring for the past 4 years. When you go to your supervisor, he or she is unaware of the details of the event, but shares some of the same concerns and asks you to look into it a little bit more. In talking with your direct reports, they all explain that it's been the most successful residence life program for the past 3 years. And so many residents come out to support it. So again, you're looking at what are your next steps in addressing your concerns. So again, talk to a couple people around you, and you all are going, how else would you sort through other potential sacred cows, things in the department, and kind of how that looks. So again, you can plop and look at the answers, but we're just going to do some round robin in a little bit, 4 or 5 minutes. So take a little bit of time.
Share that out.
Just about another minute or so, and then we'll do a little bit of round robin.
Why is it personal? And that's why. And that's the direction that we talk about it. So what is the why? Why is it personal? Can we change it for service without alcohol and reasoning? What is it? Are they getting something else like part is insurance? Can we have alcohol? So is that why? And then maybe change that.
All right, we're going to bring you all back together. And so again, we kind of painted the scenario. So we're going to just, again, if you've got a good group discussion, have a couple things you want to share. Again, the first question. So what are your next steps in addressing your concerns with this? So what she shared was figuring out where it started. What's the history of it? Is there something that was lost over the years? Is there all of a sudden become more about alcohol promotion than it was about alcohol education, for example? And just trying to figure out where's that root at and where's it coming from and who's involved. Great.
We could also talk about what are the contextual clues in the culture of the university. You can go from a dry campus to campus where they do have a senior level tug event, and then the secure advice. So there's a difference there. Alcohol promotion doesn't give us enough information. Does this mean a root beer keg, or does this mean a beer truck?
Right.
So one's educational, one maybe not. So looking at all of the history and again the contextual clues.
Yeah, great contextual clues. Talking about the history, traditions of the institution. What is it? You know, in that department. What did you find out on your campus interview or from talking to others before you started? And so you have some of that, or is it really you're restarting to figure it out when you get there? Any other thoughts?
I worked in a previous institution that actually had a bar on campus, and so that changes that look a little bit of are we promoting that place on campus, and how are we doing that, and going through risk management questions, things like that, but that kind of changes the scope of it when you realize that it is something that is central to campus, it's something that's history part of campus, it's been there for 60 years, and so what does that look like when you're talking about alcohol promotion? Is it in your hall, or is it at the bar, which, changes a little bit in your scope?
Right. I really like that point. I think it also hits home, really, both of those comments about don't go to the knee-jerk reaction, right? I mean, you've got to really think through some layers there, right? You go and all of a sudden you try to stop this event that's got this 60-year thing connected to it that you didn't know, and so you've got to sometimes take a pause and go, something's amiss, but how do I get it? And again, making the best decision with all the information.
I think for us, we talk a lot about what the implications are. I mean, the program has been a lot of growth for years. So thinking about what stakeholders are and what we're going to realistically be able to change about this program to ease our concerns, but also allow it to go on for
Right. Looking at the stakeholders and saying, hey, this wasn't started right when I got there, right? This didn't start on my watch, if you will. It's been there for 3 or 4 years. And so, what do I have the opportunity to influence and should influence and how that goes? Do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, it was just kind of a combination of what she was saying, knowing the stakeholders and how that connects to the current campus culture, and not thinking that that you are going to receive immediate change, especially being in a new position and a new person on campus. You have to know who to connect with to raise those concerns, and it not just be a concern that you are trying to fight the battle for across the board yourself.
All great points. We're going to transition to the next question. I think the only thing I would add, and as we looked at this example, is that, all right, so your supervisor's in the loop because you brought him in the loop. Supervisor's going to probably come back to you at some point and go, what's up with that program? What's going on? And they may say, I want you to make a decision if it's continuing or not. And so then you have to go through that. So just know that, not that, again, I believe in transparency with my supervisor. So I think that was a good conversation for me to have when I heard about it. I'm new, I'm trying to figure it out. They give me a little context and said, figure it out. But I think that's an important piece of, there's going to be some closing of loop, or at least coming up with that game plan for the scenario of the current program and then what it looks like down the road. The other question that we had and we'll give a couple minutes toward how would you sort through other potential sacred cows within your new department? How do you sort through those as you make that transition?
I think every institution in our department has a now, and I think that goes back to having an open and honest communication with the supervisor. They talk about how they feel. I know a lot of times you want to change, but sometimes things will change. Maybe we can tweak it into something else. Who were here 4 years ago are no longer here, are there about so I think that's an open dialogue among the department about what needs to be changed or what maybe not what needs to be changed or how, but more so how you would like to see things change if you are now part of the team that's really thriving.
So looking at the dialogue and having that and bringing folks to the table to have a conversation about, all right, what's this look like? Are the students different than when this began, and how do we transition with that?
I think that's so letting it run. I was having a problem with letting it run for a year, and let's assess exactly what it's supposed to do, whether or not it's meeting those goals, whether or not the students are getting what the students are getting out of it. So I need to come back to the table the next year and say, this is what we learned about this program, and share that.
That's great. Thanks so much. Talked about assessment, making sure you're looking at what was accomplished, what was the goal of it, did it meet what it was doing, did it not? Last comment back.
So I'm in the office. Seesaw is moderately incestuous, and the triangle schools are also mildly incestuous. So there are at least 10 people at each school that have worked at the school before. Or they work at Chapel Hill and Judah and State or State Chapel Hill. And so there's a lot of personal relationships that are formed that are informal. They give you a lot of the understanding of why this is what this is. Or they'll tell you flat out, that's not the hill you want to die on. Like, let that go. Argue this thing. And for me, I work at Judah, I think the next state is Judah. I had the pleasure of having peers who had been in the school for a long time that were no longer in the department. And so the Office of Trinity story, like she was involved or so she could tell me freely, this is why we did this. This was a lot different. We just decided to own it. And that makes it easier for me to put the context of it, like to understand who it is that I'm asking and what I really should be asking versus what I think the problem is.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think talk about, figuring out the context, those that you have relationships with, how you can connect with them that were a part of it or know the history of it. And again, kind of talking, sometimes, is it really a sacred cow? Is some of the questions I ask. Is it really that held up, or is it just, it's been going on for like 2 years? I'm like, well, that's just kind of a thing. I wouldn't call it a sacred cow, right? And sometimes it's time to make some hamburgers out of sacred cows that are around. And so sometimes it's just a new opportunity. So this is a quote we found. We did a picture of some business one. Rank does not confer privilege or give power. It imposes responsibility. And I would say a great responsibility. So as you look at taking that new position, it's not really about you. It's about like, what is that responsibility to the organization, the department, yourself, and others.
So really quickly, we wanted to just share just a few words of wisdom again from some other folks around the Seesaw region who are currently in mid-level positions. And we did a survey and asked them to kind of share what is the best piece of advice that they would give to someone who is thinking about transitioning into a mid-level position. One of the things that Dee Allenhofer, who's currently at the University of North Florida, is keep your supervisor in the know. You probably have said this to your staff, and certainly we have supervisors feel that way, is that you don't want your supervisor to be caught off guard. Oftentimes you are their eyes and ears, and so making sure they're in the know. Even though I said earlier about being strategic about what information you might be sharing as it relates to your staff, the end game is that they should never be surprised about what's going on within your individual unit.
Brian is at University of Louisville. Establish yourself as a leader and as someone who is with both the frontline staff and the director, and ensure that they can trust and rely on you. And so I think that's about, walk the walk and talk the talk, and really talk. You talk about hard work and after hours for your hall director or entry level staff, or you also, they see you as someone that's also willing to work hard and coming in for the trainings and doing that, knowing that your scope is different at times, right? And I think Chandra highlighted this earlier, is when you need to be somewhere. And sometimes I go to events, not because I really think I need to be at the event, but I'm like, I need to connect with some students, and I need to connect with some residents, and I need them to know that I really respect what they're doing, appreciate them. And I can't go to every program the staff have, but I really try to take advantage of that, so that they know that I appreciate them and that I was once in that role myself.
Our current CHO president offered this help, and you could probably almost see her saying this in terms of getting excited with the exclamation point, but really truly understanding that it is an opportunity for a lot of growth and development for yourself as a professional. I once said to someone, when I was an entry-level staff member, people liked me. Like, I could tell people the sky was purple, and they'd be like, yes, let's do it. And then when you're getting that mid-level role, you gotta be a little bit of a car salesman, a persuader, a coach. Sometimes you're a counselor. You have 50,000 different roles that you play. But it certainly is an opportunity to learn a lot about who you are as a professional, and really give some thought to what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind. And so it really is something to get excited about. We talked about some of the challenges related to mid-level management, but there are also lots of opportunities to learn and grow about the professional that you otherwise want to be. This last one, Gavin Mosley, who's at the University of Florida, actually this is our last one, about again having a mentor. We talked a lot about reaching out to people who may not be on your campus that can provide you with some wisdom and support, but also important to really hone in on learning how to be the best supervisor you can be. Again, in almost every mid-level manager position comes the opportunity to also be a great supervisor.
Brent, Countess, pay attention to what your supervisor is doing or not doing. How are they succeeding or not succeeding? And try to understand why those things are happening. Work really hard to widen your vision and see beyond just your place in the organization. That is something you should start now, regardless of what position you are. What is it, not just beyond my own current position, but how that works? I had a staff member that worked for me, talked about not just seeing the tree, but looking at the whole forest and seeing what's all there, right? It's so easy just to think about the one tree. And so I think that comes to play in a lot of different ways. And so I really love that quote. Kind of transitioning our resources, we have a few that we're going to highlight, and we'll make sure that we also share the PDF with the program committee in case they want to put it anywhere of the presentation so that you can get to these resources. But again, we've highlighted some. As you think about it, right, we think about our CHO award for mid-level, right? Here at CHO, we say 7 years. That's the marker number that we've said. But there may be mid-level managers that are in year 4 or 5. So really looking at the different opportunities for professional development at that mid-level. And what I would tell you is there's lots of opportunities. It just kind of depends on what you're willing to go after and what you're trying to build from a skill set. So the certificate programs to a cool eye, housing assessment, occupancy management, architecture course series, and project management, looking at going to sessions outside of what you typically do, not just in the field or area that you're in, but really widening that at CHO or a cool eye. James C. Graham National Housing Training Institute, they've widened that experience level. It's now 3 to 7, and they have 2 cohorts, and that's a change this coming year. And so their goal is to get that opportunity to more in that 3 to 7 window. Again, it used to be a cap of 5, so there's some opportunity there. Chief Housing Officer Institute, and looking at what that provides, looking at, when do I qualify, when, what's that really look like, but there's some information and opportunities and resources through that. Couple different ones, Bid Manager Institute specifically, NASPA and ACPA both have Mid Manager Institutes. I know that some in this room have attended some of those. So again, looking at those opportunities that allow you to, again, peer group, challenge yourself, find other colleagues across the region or nation or world in some cases. And again, increasing your involvement on campus across Seesaw and or professional organizations. Again, I always say, don't try to go get involved in something unless you're willing to commit to it, because that reputation will follow you. You want to get on the committee of such and such, but you never respond to emails and you never do anything with it, then the people will assume that that's just what you do on campus. You may be a rock star on campus, but again, thinking about that involvement, and if you're really ready to commit, get involved on a committee and talk to those chairs and get involved, but don't do it haphazardly. Really say, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a good job so that people know that that's associated with my work ethic and what I can bring to the table.
Some of you may be currently in school. I know that I am. And one of my areas of research is about mid-level managers. And surprisingly, to note, is that although there are tons of people in mid-level manager roles, and they are probably the most numbered individuals beyond your entry level, there's probably the least amount of research about mid-level managers. So for those of you who are in doctoral programs or thinking about doc programs, this is a great topic to research because it is not a vast array of information out there. But here are just a couple of resources that we did find, including the Handbook of Student Affairs, mid-level administrators, what you should know, some national studies that have been done as you're trying to understand, even from an academic lens, what it is to know about mid-level positions. And for those who aren't necessarily interested in being scholarly per se, but like to do some casual reading, earbook books, these are some things that both Gavin and I have read that are specific, not just about the mid-level position, but that also do a good job talking about transition in some cases, but also are very good management books that can help you as you're trying to hone your supervision skills and what do you want to become known as, or just some great books to take a moment to read to get some better ideas as you're still developing and trying to figure out ultimately what type of supervisor you would like to be. Again, that's just a JK in terms of our poll. Here's our contact information. Please feel free, if you have questions that we did not get a chance to answer for you during this presentation, we'll both stay up here afterwards, but feel free to shoot us an email. Again, we will look to share the information in terms of the resources and the references that you saw. And want to just take the time to thank you all so much for participating in our session this afternoon.